And then when it's my turn, I just say, well, that's about it.
4, 3, 2.
Every time we count down, I see us counting down on the
live?
live feed. So we're live probably already. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The countdown doesn't mean shit. Anyway, hey, everybody, welcome to Show Me the Meaning, Wisecrack's movie podcast.
Show me Valhalla!
Witness me.
Witness me!
My name is Jared, and today we got a very special episode of Show Me the Meaning. And why is this a special episode, you might be asking? Well, if you're watching the YouTube live stream, or if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Wisecast, you can see that in person right here, we have the Show Me the Meaning crew. We got Ryan.
Hey, film fans.
We got Austin in person.
It's about to get problematic in here. I don't know which camera I'm looking at, but all of them.
Yeah. So we've been doing this podcast since about December last year.
Yeah, something.
And
like that.
this is the first time I've ever met Austin.
Yeah,
in
me
person.
too. And for people out there, these two are fucking tall, man.
I know,
they're
right?
like both like
Super
6'2", 6'3".
I forget how
Surprisingly
tall I am.
tall.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Like, I'm 6 foot and I come in and, you think that someone live is going to be smaller than, like the Tom Cruise thing or like something. But you guys are the opposite of that. You guys are like Vince Vaughn's.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
also, and it's mostly in the legs, right? So when you're sitting, you look normal.
Right.
But then when
Yeah.
you stand, you're huge.
Yeah, my legs are kind of disproportionate. I can't fit into my roommate's car. Anyway, and we got Rebekah here in person.
Hey, everybody.
So it's just very serendipitous that their vacations happen to overlap, and they're both here in studio today, and it's really exciting. Great to have you guys here.
No, thanks. I'm
Yeah,
stoked.
good to be here.
So, guys, today we're talking about Mad Max Fury Road, the 2015 film directed by George Miller, starring Tom Hardy, Charlize Theron, and Nicholas Hoult.
Fuck yeah!
Fuck yeah. Let's go ahead and get some first impressions. What was it like first time you saw it? What was it like revisiting it? Let's start with Austin.
Oh, man. Okay, so first time I saw it, I got a buddy, the dude that I Dig This Movie podcast with. He's a director in London. He's like, this is the best action movie I've ever seen. He loves Australian cinema, so he loves George Miller. So he was like, this is fucking amazing. So I had crazy high expectations going in, and it actually, for once, exceeded my expectations.
Yeah.
I literally, every time I watch this now, I'm like, this is the best action movie ever. Like, this and The Raid 2 are like, just on another level, man.
Oh, cool. I'm glad to hear you say that about The Raid 2. Have you seen The Raid 1?
No, I've actually never seen The Raid 1.
Oh, that's
Oh,
the
yeah,
problem.
the Raid, yeah.
Gotta see the Raid 1.
Yeah.
Most people prefer The Raid 1, but I love them both.
Yeah, they're both excellent, yeah.
Yeah. Or what about you, Rebekah?
Oh, my God. I mean, well, first of all, I went in expecting, like, traditional Mad Max stuff. And I was just so surprised that Furiosa ended up being how central as she was, and that there was so much like female-dominated action in the film. It was so surprising and awesome. So I mean, talk about exceeding expectations. I mean, I went in being like, all right, this is just another bro movie for the guys who love action, and I love it. I mean, I say that as somebody who really likes action films. So I just found it so cool and so interesting.
Have you seen all the other Mad Max movies?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I hadn't for a while, but
Right. Yeah, I've actually only I've only seen Road Warrior. Is
Really?
Road Warrior the first one?
That's the second one.
Yeah, that's the one that everyone says is the one that you got to see, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so I've only seen that one and this one.
Well, you've seen
But
the
I
two
know that
best
you've
ones.
seen
Yeah,
all
they're
of
the
them,
best
right?
ones, yeah.
Yeah, it's debatable. Either 2 or 4 is first, but I think 2, 4, 1, then Thunderdome.
This is
3.
4.
Yeah, this is
Fury
4.
Road is 4. Okay. What about you, Ryan? Going in, I know you were a big fan.
Yeah, this is a movie with a capital MOVIE. I love the fuck out of this in so many ways. It's so impressive. But like, I mean, first and foremost, all credit needs to go to George fucking Miller, right? If you don't know, this movie was made by a 70-year-old man.
Yeah.
Somehow still at the top of his prime. And when you look at his filmography on IMDb, it's hilarious because in like 30 years, basically, he's made some of the most hardcore. He basically invented a genre, the post-apocalyptic, action genre, and then he's made Happy Feet movies and Babe movies.
Yeah,
Babe
you got
Pig
to
in
pay the
City.
bills, man.
I know. No, everyone loves those movies too. I mean, Babe Pig in the City is
Absolutely,
lauded as the best Babe movie.
Wait, people like Happy Feet. I was thinking about Mr. Popper's Penguins.
No, and, I mean, and
Wrong
Happy Feet
Penguin
has
movie.
its fans too, and it won
Yeah,
Oscars
yeah.
and stuff. I mean, I say Babe is the best Babe movie. I mean, it's a ridiculous Babe movie, but I mean, it's just crazy that he made it. The Mad Max film,
Yeah,
tour.
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, this movie just came out of fucking nowhere for me. I mean, it took them like 15 years to make it, and you kind of are like, it's one of those do we need another Mad Max movie?
Yeah.
There's been 3. The third one sucked, kind of. Why? We'll go back, kind of, to that. And against, like George Miller, give it all credit to him that he had this vision of basically a 2-hour-long single action piece car chase sequence that works against all odds. And like you said, it has all these really interesting themes that aren't present in other action movies. And I think it does kind of, even though it is one chase sequence, it kind of is trying to say stuff. Like that we can break down. So I love this movie.
Yeah. Great.
Me too.
And there's a fucking dude playing the guitar, like
with
rocking
the
out.
fucking flamethrower out of it.
Like, so this might be the first movie that we've done together that we all like. Right?
Is that right?
I don't
that
think
can't be true. Oh, that's certainly not true
well,
for
not
us
for the two
three.
of you, but we've been on a few before.
Well, we all like The Matrix. We all love The Matrix, the first one.
The first one, that's true.
Yeah. But the second and the third.
Okay, I stand corrected.
The second and third ones we have mixed feelings about.
Well, the funny thing is, I enjoyed the conversation. So I feel like
Yes,
now,
always.
if I meet someone on the street and they're like, "Hey, what do you think about the second Matrix?" I'll be like, "Yeah, it's interesting."
Yeah.
Well,
You would be like, "It's the superhero of the left."
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
If someone asked me if they should watch that, I say just go listen to the Wisecrack podcast about it. It's
No
more
way. There's
entertaining
no
than the
way
film.
they would be able to follow what we're talking
I'm
about.
just saying,
I
mean,
it's a
you
better-
can see
it's
the
a better
movie and you
piece
can
of
still barely
content.
follow what the fuck we're talking about.
But anyway, we love Mad Max.
We love
Great.
Mad Max. I love this movie.
about you,
I
Jared?
saw it in 2015 when it came out, and I was blown away. I don't really even know what I was expecting. You know, the weird thing is that I remember when it came out, everyone was talking about, oh my God, this is a reaffirmation of practical effects. And rewatching it, I was like, wait a second. This doesn't really look as practical as I remember. Now, granted, like a lot of like cars crashing and stuff, all practical, all looks awesome, all, you know, thank God for that stuff. Maybe it's been a couple. Maybe have there been other movies recently that have done more practical stuff?
I mean,
Maybe
The Raid
I just saw
is kind of
The
the
Raid,
big one.
Mission Impossible 5 I just saw. Maybe I
Yeah.
have that kind of in my head. But
Fast and Furious movies, they do that
Are
shit.
they practical?
I don't
some
know.
of the car crashes are probably.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, there's something so glorious about a slow motion car just going and like all these pieces everywhere that you really
100%.
can't capture with CGI. But
Yeah, like that storm is total CGI.
yeah. I remember this movie. Didn't it get nominated for Best Picture and it came out in like January of that year? Something like that. Where it's always pretty impressive if a movie comes out early in the year and is not an Oscar type movie. Kind of like Get Out. Get Out came out super early that year and it just stuck with people. People remembered it all the way up until Oscar season, which is rarely happens.
I mean, I don't remember if it did get nominated, but I know that it made a lot of year-end like top 10 lists
it
and
did.
shit.
I mean, I think it reached a broader audience than some of the last Mad Max films. And that makes it stick out. Like people were expecting a certain kind of Mad Max, and then everybody got a Mad Max they could like, and that seemed like that's noteworthy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, let's go into a recap. So, in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, a wanderer known as Max is captured and brought to the Citadel, run by Immortan Joe, a sickly tyrant who lords over the impoverished by controlling the water supply and anointing himself God. Joe sends a band of his devoted war boys and their leader, I don't know what it is, Furiosa, to get more gasoline and bullets. But Furiosa veers off course and Joe realizes she's betrayed him. She's taken his sex/fertility slaves as stowaways and plans to liberate them. So Joe rallies a new team to pursue Furiosa, including warboy Nux, who, desperate for glory, brings Max along as a blood bag and pursues Furiosa through a nasty storm. Max reluctantly teams up with Furiosa to fend off Immortan Joe's pursuit. After trying to kill Furiosa on board the rig, Nux rejoins Joe's team and is personally recognized or witnessed by Joe. But when he fails and Joe expresses his disappointment, Nux starts having a crisis of faith, aided by the nurturing words of the wives on board the rig, who eventually convince him to help them. Max, Furiosa, and Nux eventually reach the Green Place to find Max, Furiosa, and Lux eventually reach the Green Place, only to discover that there's nothing green left. All that's left of Furiosa's clan are a bunch of grizzled female warriors. Furiosa and the, quote, mothers are about to... Furiosa and the mothers are about to spend the rest of their days fleeing when Max suggests they go to the one place that still has plentiful water, the Citadel. So they turn their war rig around and race to the Citadel while it's unguarded. Joe quickly realizes their plan and pursues them. Furiosa kills Joe, and Nux sacrifices himself to ensure the war rig a safe passage. Max and Furiosa return to the Citadel, reveal Joe's dead body, and Furiosa is ascended to the top, where she will assume control, while Max disappears amongst the crowd, out to forge his own path. End of movie.
Over here, just massive head nods
Yes.
from Rebekah.
Head nods.
Fucking A. That's right.
Fucking A, that's what happens. Hell yeah.
Witness me.
So like the first thing I thought about when I was watching this time, which I hadn't thought about before, was Derrida and phallogocentrism.
Oh yeah.
And this idea of like a reversal of
You're gonna
the
have to
patriarchy.
explain.
Yeah, we will. So phallogocentrism is a portmanteau of phallocentrism and logocentrism.
Yeah.
And phallocentrism, we'll say logocentrism is the idea that history has been dominated by the word, and it usually is kind of understood as like judgmental reason or like determinateness.
Certain kinds of logic. Yeah.
Right. And so so that was a criticism of Derrida. And then another criticism is that this idea that history has also been conditioned by what we would call maybe in the current present moment like a patriarchal logic. But it's even more than that. It's more about this idea of a particular phallocentric, as in like the phallus in Freud's Oedipus complex, that has kind of conditioned the desiring conditions of Western society in particular. So he brings them together and he creates this word called phallogocentrism. But he does that to sort of like deconstruct the binary of male, female, man, woman, as Derrida does with deconstruction, right? So I'm looking at this movie and I'm thinking, all right, so you have these like total masculine dudes, and like they're spraying their face with fucking drugs, and they got these crazy weapons, and it's like testosterone and rah, right? And then you have these women who are like, they're made in the image of a man's desire. They're to be breeders, and they're wearing like white because they're pure, and they're the beautiful models. Like it's, what's her name? Huntington, Rosie Huntington Whitley or whatever her name is.
Is
And
that the
Zoe
name of one of
Kravitz.
the wives?
The one that dies first.
Okay,
one
the
that's,
pregnant
Yes, the
one.
pregnant
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Rosie Huntington Wheatley or whatever her name is. I don't know. But anyway, and so you get these women, but then you have Furiosa, who is kind of standing in between and challenging these like gender binaries. And then, of course, at the end, she kind of ends up on top. And the movie's called Mad Max, but really, she's kind of the protagonist.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like an overturning. I don't know if George Miller meant this, but it's like a criticism of this phallogocentric logic of determinateness,
See,
of masculinity, and then you get almost a sort of like Hegelian synthesis at the end.
Okay, so you got me with the Hegel thing, but I would say I largely so I would say that probably like the biggest thing that's happening, you know, when this movie came out, there was a lot of talk about like it having like kind of like feminist slants to it, but
Right.
and I think that that's definitely there. So let me just go through some of the things. So like obviously the women are largely objectified in this movie. That's like the whole thing is that the wives are constantly saying we're not objects, we're
Yeah,
people,
we're not things. Yeah,
we're not
yeah.
things. Yeah, that's what they say. So like the women are known as breeders. They're even kept in a giant bank vault like you would another like precious
Well, they're referred to as
objects.
assets at one point.
Yeah, property.
Got to protect the assets. There are other women that are milked like cows to make mother's milk. There's writing on the wall that says we're not things. Morton Joe is constantly referring to them as their treasures. So obviously, and then in contrast, Furiosa is just like the ultimate badass.
Yeah.
And
But-
even the women, I have to point out, I mean, yeah, sure, they're models, and they're so skinny they probably don't even menstruate, like let alone be able to produce
Right.
babies. They should have been like a little heftier. But yeah, they're not like damsels in any sense. They're pretty knowledgeable. They know how to load guns. So they're also not really portrayed. They might be lovely, but they're portrayed as kind of being prepared to take risks and handle themselves and fight if need be and risk themselves in some way. So I also think that's worth, even though they're models and whatever.
So,
but
because
that's
some
interesting about it.
Because some
yeah.
people, they criticized it and they said, no, it's not really a feminist film because they're still fitting into these norms. But I kind of thought, isn't that the point? Because the point is that they're still living in this society and they're chosen based on their physical attributes or whatever, and they're dressed to kind of like fulfill the desiring stereotype.
Yeah.
So the point is that within that world, the world of a Morton Joe, where he is the God figure, then these are this is like the idea of what a woman ought to be. But then there's like a sort of like deconstruction of that as they exhibit agency and they take power, and then Furiosa then gets elevated.
And they're like the only ones who are like hip to the real shit that's going on.
Right.
Yeah. They have, yeah.
So all that is present, but what I realized when I watched this is I feel like, I mean, the men are just as much victims of this society.
Yes, absolutely.
You ever hear like in the interwebs that they say that like, you know, yes, women are objectified under this system, but in the same way men are disposable under this system.
Well,
and I think we definitely see this in the movie. They're disposable, they're brainwashed to be disposable under ideological conditioning. So I think that the feminism thing is definitely more obvious because it's so rare that we have movies with badass females like Charlize Theron.
But I think that's only if you understand, right? Feminism isn't just like women.
No, I know.
Get free.
Yeah.
Feminism, its point is like, look, patriarchy's fucking with you and it's fucking with us.
Everybody.
It's just doing it in different ways. It's making you disposable in certain ways and it's making us disposable in certain ways. So I think even that point that the men are disposable is still a fundamentally feminist point.
And without getting too like wanky and philosophical, and Rebekah can probably speak to this better since you do a lot more work on Derrida than I have. The idea of deconstruction isn't that it's like one versus the other. It's actually to completely deconstruct, but it's to kind of blur that binary altogether and to unpack both of those. So it isn't that men are here and women are there. It's that we perceive men and women as being here and there, but that actually there's a much more complex, tense, co-constituting relationship between the two.
Yeah.
And so at the end, when Mad Max kind of slinks off into the crowd and Furiosa's getting erected, that isn't like, only women, identity of women as constituted, as we understand it based on this pre-constituted idea of gender, are erected, and men, you don't matter. No, it's a much more complex, like, intertwining between the two.
I
think
think even
why...
one of the wives says that at some point. Like, she says to that
Nux.
kid, right? She's like, no, we're the same in this system. We're both disposable. We're both owned.
Right.
So, it's a point they highlight through the women.
So I think that, to your point, I think one of that moment at the end where Max basically becomes a blood bag again to save Furiosa is so nice.
Yes.
Because, you know, there is that sense of both of them, that's like the ultimate Max objectification or being disposable, in that he's literally just becomes a bag of blood for the war boys to get high off of. And then he kind of like reappropriates that to save her life is pretty amazing.
But also, I think, I mean, it's very Derridian, but it's also, I mean, I think it's also got like some feminist Marxist overtones, right? Because you notice that, like, if we think about it, patriarchy is, it's about, you know, objectification and these sorts of things, but what it's really about is like controlling the means of production, right? And if there's a post-apocalyptic society, the thing you have to control are women's bodies, because they are the thing that's going to be producing children. They're going to be the thing that's producing milk. So I also think it's pretty like feminist Marxist in its recognition that at this stage, basically everybody becomes property of the higher up, right?
Yeah, maybe it's not production, but he has control of the water, which is everything.
Well, I mean, like womb as a productive model, right? And so at one point, right, when the wife is there, he leans to her and says, "That's my baby," right? So it's this way of taking ownership of the women's bodies, because they are literally the means of producing life at that point, and they're the only ones who can produce life. And so I think it kind of strips a lot of I don't know, a lot of shiny stuff away from patriarchy to just be like, look, at the end of the day, here's the deal. We produce babies and people need that shit. And in a post-apocalyptic society, you need to control that or you're fucked. And so that these women are in a vault, right? It's not just significant because they're women and, you know, men like to treat women a certain way, but also because they're literally the means of production, and he's literally controlling it.
In terms of the, like, how... like much George Miller, you know, while constructing this, you know, is thinking about these things. Like, do you, just speculation? Do you feel like it's a feminist metaphor for like, all right, this is like the patriarchy, and this means this is, or is it like this is the end all extreme of where our current system would take us if you know? Is it like a cautionary tale, like? Like, I guess where does the feminist critique really lie? Like, or what do you think George Miller actually thinks about this stuff?
Yeah.
I just kind of think that, I mean, for my 2 cents, I think that he built this idea of a post-apocalypse, and he just asked himself, what would men and women's roles? How are women and how are men and women marginalized in society today? And now let's amplify this. Or let's just amplify it to what would happen if there were limited resources. What would we still value in men? Well, we'd value their ability to be battle fodder, and with women, we'd value their ability to reproduce. And it just naturally became that kind of a statement.
And you don't think it's him looking around going, you know what? look at this patriarchal system. I'm going to make a Mad Max movie about
Well,
today.
no, but I
Who
think
knows?
I think it does. I mean,
Which I think is kind of what we're getting into,
yeah,
right?
he might not have been, and I don't know if he was like, you know what, yeah, this is going to be a feminist, manifesto in any sense. But I think he was super cautious, or he was super attentive to the way that bodies are used today, and he thought, I mean, in a sort of cautionary way, like if this society ended, how would the people in this society end up figuring things out afterward? And they would do it according to these patriarchal norms, right?
Yeah.
According men being fodder, women being bodies. So yeah, whether he intended it to be some kind of thing we could go on and on about, or bring in lots of feminist philosophers too, I don't know, but I do think it really accurately was like, if this society crashed, there would be lots of other societies if they crashed, you would not end up having those sorts of structures because that's not the way philosophically we've organized ourselves. So it's not going to be the end result. Like post-apocalyptically, that might not happen, but in our society, that is the way we think about bodies. And it's the way we think about owning stuff, right? Like those are all paradigms that are pretty culturally specific. And so I don't think you would find that kind of paradigm in every post-apocalyptic literature. I mean, there are lots of post-apocalyptic literatures that imagine things otherwise. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, I do think it's at once just kind of a natural result of this system, but also then a critique of the system at the same time.
Interesting.
I would say, yeah, it probably was just like critique of the system, and then it just kind of turned out like it did.
If I had to give one major critique of this movie, it's that I believe at the beginning, isn't there like a text screen or something, or voiceover that says like 40? Isn't this like 45 years after the apocalypse?
I don't know if it's text. Is there text?
So I
I
have the opening monologue by Max, but he doesn't mention any kind of timeline.
There's all this like news reports
Imagery
and
of,
shit.
yeah.
I
they're
have all that
talking
written
about.
down.
I don't know why I'm remembering this, but I remember that it was like 50 years or something like after
So
the
not very
apocalypse,
long,
and I'm like, that doesn't seem like that long enough for all these traditions and y'all's like weird ass post-apocalyptic culture to take hold.
I don't know, man. If one person has access to water, the traditions happen overnight. Whatever he says goes.
Yeah,
You know?
but you see in 50 years, people are going to be strapping people to the hoods of cars with blood bags. I mean, like,
I don't know. I mean, once again, if there is a crazy man who has these ideas and he controls all the water, yeah, it could happen in 1 year.
Temporally, is this in line with the other three? Like, does
I was wondering that, like,
just go back to
those
cavemen in 1
flashbacks,
year?
those flashbacks that Max has, does that actually refer to any previous installments?
And it talks about how he used to be a
Yes,
cop
it
and how
does.
he had a different mission before and he failed, and so that's why he's on this mission of redemption.
So
It
he
actually-
is the same character as Mel Gibson.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
actually kind of confusing, honestly, because there's in the first movie that there's a scene where you see him, I think, in his daughter. He's like, his daughter got run over by or got killed by these marauding, post-apocalyptic people, and then you see the exact same shots, like frame for frame, in these weird flashbacks from the first movies. It's actually really cool.
Wow.
So,
really?
but did they reshoot it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But they're reshot
like-
reenactments of stuff that happens in the first movie.
Yes, but you would
Okay.
never know it. It doesn't matter.
It
to
doesn't
the
matter,
story
yeah.
at all. But like, it's really cool little Easter egg for.
Well, I do think it matters a little bit because I feel like this was the first Mad Max where I felt like, oh, Max is actually mad. He's actually crazy, And in the other ones, I feel like he's still kind of a
Smarmy Mel Gibson.
smarmy,
Yeah.
male hero. And I mean, I love post-apocalyptic shit, so I'm gonna eat it up anyway. But this one was interesting because I felt like, no, he's actually like on the verge of being insane, and that was really interesting to play with throughout the movie. I thought they did a really good job of that.
Yeah, the last words of his monologue are, "As the world fell, each of us in our own way was broken. It's hard to know who was more crazy, me or everyone else."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think he really seems crazy. And those flashbacks, I think, as he's like running from the Marauders at the very beginning, right? And through their like whatever their tunnel system or whatever, he's getting these crazy flashbacks and he can almost like not focus on things. And I thought that was so great to set the tone. Like, we just so you know, this guy's actually like a few pretzels short of a full bag or whatever. Like, he's not quite.
I also think that it was just the minimum amount of information we need to know that this guy has like amends to make, that he is looking for some sort of redemption and he's going to help people because of it.
Yeah.
And we don't need to know the details, and I don't even need to know who that girl is.
Yes.
It's just we see the flashbacks, we see his reaction. I get it.
Yeah.
I kind of
Move
thought
on.
of him as like a figure in purgatory. You know, because he talks about how he's in between the living
Yeah.
and the dead, and he's got these flashbacks, and then you have the half-lives, which are the people that are alive, but they're kind of he's kind of not in either of those two camps, and he's almost like this dude that's been cursed in purgatory, and this is his mission to get to Valhalla, you know,
Yeah.
to get to heaven
Yeah.
or something like that. And so
Yeah.
he kind of, I don't know,
Yeah.
and I kind of thought that maybe Furiosa would have been in a similar sort of. She too is kind of elevated. She's not like one of the Half-Life boy. What are they called? The War Boys or
War
whatever.
Boys, yeah.
She's not like there, but then at the same time, she's not elevated to like a hierarchical status or an authoritarian status. But she does have a level of privilege that she's given because she's like the great Furiosa, the driver of this.
And
tank.
it seems like that's what she feels like she has to atone for, right? That she's been one of the people who's been implementing this power structure over the women, over these war boys, over everybody. And so when she says like, "What are you seeking?" Redemption. You know, like that's it's like she's done her fair share of shitty things, and she's got to. Yeah.
One of the things I was going to say too, you were just talking about how it's like the minimal amount of information is given.
Yeah.
Miller is so fucking good at this throughout
Yeah.
the film.
The
Like
whole
so,
film, yeah.
a point that really struck me last night, and it's super simple, just a filmmaking technique. Tom Hardy's referred to as a blood bag, but they don't really show what that means at
Right.
first. So there's not like an explanation of, oh well, you have to hook up the blood because I'm dying and I need O negative or whatever the fuck. They don't do like exposition to kind of tell you. They're just like, he's a blood bag, you're sick, you don't have enough strength, and that's kind of it. And then later, after the crash, he gets up after the crash and he unplugs himself, and there's just
It looks like a fish hook.
It
too.
does,
yeah. And there's like, it lingers on it for just enough time, so you're like, oh, that's how they do it.
Yeah.
And then it kind of shows how it's connected to Nux, like wrist or whatever the fuck it is. And that's it. And that's it. And then you get the whole idea of how this system works. And you're like, oh, fuck, that's just, the whole movie is filled with that kind of
Yeah.
storytelling.
He's a
This is the
cinematic-
first time I watched
Genius,
the movie with headphones, and I can pretty much with like 90% confidence say that they didn't record any audio for the whole movie.
It's all
the whole
ADR.
thing is ADR.
It's all
ADR.
Which is, for those of you that don't know, that means basically like on the set or on the day they didn't actually record the audio, or they probably recorded a scratch track, but it was Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron going into a studio, basically dubbing themselves over their own mouths. And I think that, yeah, that's just more to the point that they were planning on telling this story visually, and then they
Yeah.
were just going to kind of like pepper in whatever minimal relevant context is needed as it
Yeah.
goes on.
And is it filmed at a faster frame rate? It looks like it's not 24 or 25 frames, but it looks like it's like 60 or something. Cause
I wouldn't be surprised.
Or it's sped up maybe just a tick, because it, especially there's a bit when Max is in the
Yes,
truck,
yeah.
and it's like it's so
At the
fucking
very beginning,
squirrely,
yeah.
but
it kind of adds
I
to
know
the
what shot you're
frenetic.
talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, I really liked that there was so little dialogue.
Yeah.
But so much story. I mean, it was pretty remarkable. I mean, I think it just goes to show that the directing was phenomenal and that the actors were so good that they were just like, we're just going to let you be awesome and communicate all these things with subtle glances or, right, with very, very subtle gestures. You don't even have to say very much. So I was just struck as I was watching this movie how powerful and packed, right, the story was, but how little they
This is
talked.
definitely
It was
the
so,
this is the best Tom Hardy grunting movie. Because he grunts
Yeah.
in what was the DiCaprio bear movie?
Oh,
Revenant.
The
Revenant. He's a
Lawless.
grunt. He grunts in that. He
Lawless.
grunts in Lawless.
All he does
yeah,
is
it's
grunt.
Yeah.
Bane.
Yeah, Bane. Yeah,
Bane.
Bane. Yeah.
Bane's a grunter.
Yeah.
I like him more when he grunts. Like I've seen the trailer for what's the fuck, Venom.
Venom.
Oh yeah,
Dude,
I'm
it's-
Venom.
so
Yes.
disappointed.
Dude,
It looks whack.
what part of New York is he from? He sounds weird.
And he's
Yeah, he
usually good
does
with
sound
accents.
weird.
Did you
The
see
London part.
Locke? He does
Yeah.
a Welsh accent, and apparently, like from Welsh people, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Welsh people. But from what I read, it's actually okay, and he's really good
Okay.
at like transforming himself. But this accent, the whole trailer, I was like, bro.
Yeah.
Dude, the new trailer, I think looks bad.
Oh,
Have
like-
you seen
like
it?
Bad?
No,
The,
but
the full trailer where you get to see like a comedy
yeah.
section. And,
Yeah. Adam worked on it.
I do know that. Yeah, I've been keeping my mouth shut about that.
Oh shit, we shouldn't. Yeah, I probably
Never
shouldn't say
mind.
that. Oh yeah. Shit, what were we just talking about?
We were talking about
the ratio of story to dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like there's very little story in this movie. It's more just like there's so much packed into this, like y'all are talking about. Like it's so dynamic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they don't have to explain the story.
Yeah.
But
Right.
but we get so much out of it. But then I just George Miller, man.
Yeah, really. Yeah,
One of my
so
favorite
impressive.
things that I noticed this time is like this this thing of infantilism going on, especially with Immortan Joe and like the leaders. Like Immortan Joe has like 2 sons. One is like the deformed small guy, and then one is the huge ripped guy. And they're always talking to each other like a bunch of children. Like, you know, he's like, go see what's agitating Dad. And then like the biggest one is like when they find out what Furiosa's doing, the big swole brother is like, she thinks she can lose us. She thinks we're stupid, Dad. You know, it's these leaders are, especially like this whole discussion about like motherhood and stuff like that. And they seem so infantilized and just, it's really interesting.
We've done some videos on like Donna Haraway and cyborg theory.
We've done one on Fallout 4. Yeah.
Okay, so because I was thinking a lot about the relationship between technology and nature in this film too. Like how many of the humans are enhanced by technology? You've got Immortan John, that like he's got that breathing apparatus and that chest plate to enhance his frail human status. You've got Furiosa, who's missing a limb. You've got all of these war boys who need blood bags in order to survive. Everyone is dependent upon technology except for the women, who are like the pure expression of nature, right? They're kind of like almost Gaia figures.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
But it's because they're dependent on technology because of the nuclear fallout that made them all into mutants or something like that. That's what we're supposed to believe, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe. Is that right? They're
I
all
think
like
so, yeah.
sick and
they're all
because
sick.
that one dude
they have the
the
half-lives. Like they're all like all the war boys. One of the reasons why they're so gung-ho about doing this is because they have very short lifespans.
Right.
Because they're all diseased. Even Nux. What is it?
He's got
like
some like cancerous growths.
Or like he's like
named
weaker or something. So he's like he wants to prove himself and make it to Valhalla before his natural life expires. I guess.
I love Nux.
Yeah, he's great.
I know.
He is.
Wait,
what a nice man.
Another thing I thought of, I forgot to mention this earlier, but I was the women keep saying throughout the movie like, who broke the world?
Yes.
Or something like that, right? Which is another thing that I think, I mean, is really a really intentional way for the director, whose name I can't recall right now,
George
Miller, to connect what's happening right now to the system that's in place after it all falls. Basically, there's this like little critique like, yeah, okay, but the system you have in power now looks pretty much just like the system you had beforehand, right? Where certain powerful men are in control and everybody else just, is just like the masses that are disposable in some way, women in one way, men in another way. And this claim that they keep making, I think we first see it written on a wall in the women's vault, and then the wives repeat it a few times, like, you guys broke the world, right? So in that way, again, I also think it connects what's happening right now, or the kind of world that we have right now, to the system. Like, this world breaks because of those certain power structures, and they end up happening.
Is there any
again,
explicit connection to an individual or something that broke the world in the earlier installments, or
No.
it's just we never know what happened?
It's always just the greed of man, led to a bomb.
Yeah, but it is also strange that there are very few, if any, people of color in the film, even though it's supposed to take place in Australia.
Oh, you mean this movie or in the whole series?
This movie, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it's in
there's lots of
Australia,
people
right?
of color.
Only in like the sea of crowd of poor
You do
people.
see some?
Well, Zoe Kravitz.
Who does she play?
She's one of the
she's one of the
wives.
wives. That's one of the wives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's another woman who is darker, but I don't know if she is just really tan.
Yeah.
I mean, she's been out in the sun for decades.
has,
So
Yeah.
Or maybe she's been
Yeah, but Zoe Kravitz is obviously
Yes.
Lisa Bonet
Yes.
and Lenny
it's
Kravitz.
certainly not
Sorry,
making the kind of countercultural statement that The Matrix Reloaded is,
Yeah,
with like the
right.
very deliberate use of people of color
yeah,
in Zion.
yeah.
Let's talk about diesel punk. So diesel punk is the what I've been told, or the way I've seen this movie being described. It's like an emphasis on the big clunky artillery
Yeah.
weaponry.
I just
chrome,
spent a whole week at
steel.
a diesel punk festival.
That's right. He was just at Burning Man. You just lived Mad Max.
I did. I was just in Fury Road for about a
Were you
week.
spraying your face with that silver shit and getting a little crunk?
Got fucked up on that.
Yeah, so there's a couple things I find interesting about this. I love how they've kind of reappropriated like pagan-like worship terms to like diesel or tech stuff. So like the guy who has all those bullets around him is called the Bullet Farmer, and
that's right.
yeah, what is
The names, if you go to just like fucking Wikipedia and shit.
people? Yeah, someone called the
names are all
bullets
descriptive.
anti-seed. I think that's just so interesting how, like a pagan will worship the earth, they worship diesel technology and metal and stuff. And like I feel like this movie is like sound of engines roaring porn, and I feel like that like in a meta way, you can hit the meta button. That's the wrong one. Yes.
Do we have a problematic button?
We used to. I don't know where that one went.
I had
Oh, that's
requests
so
from
funny.
people on Twitter that were saying you better say problematic. So I'm just gonna problematic.
But like the fact that we enjoy this movie so much, it kind of almost like speaks to the message of the film. You know, if we're in the theater and we hear those diesel engines roaring in the scenes, and we're just like, we kind of get like aroused by them. It's similar to the worship that the characters are experiencing.
I definitely get the energy from all the war boys whenever
Oh,
they're
yeah.
just
I mean, I was
going into
like,
it. You're like, wow,
so
I'm on their
pumped.
side.
Yeah. So
I want to go
pumped.
into
Yeah.
Valhalla.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
let's do it.
Yeah.
Witness me. Fuck.
Yeah. No, that's true, man. I see when I see this movie, like there are all these other readings. We could talk about like a sort of Marxist analysis or a feminist criticism, but for me, I cannot get away from like a psychoanalytic reading about desire and the production of desire and how you have like these fantasies that are erected, and all of this whole system is a system of signification that is supposed to justify and reinforce what Lacan would refer to as the master signifier, which is like it's the signifier that has no signified, but it begins the chain of signifying. So let's just say it's like the empty placeholder that starts the whole idea of meaning itself, right? And that's Immortan Joe. He kind of is the symbol of the master signifier. In this whole fucking movie, like all the testosterone shit, all the dude shit, all the fantasies about women, all the nature technology stuff, all of that kind of like fills in this philosophical psychoanalytic reading about like a system of desiring production and imitation and management over resources, which are there like used to just create more desire. I think it's fucking genius, man. But I literally think it's.
Can you
happenstance.
imagine? Yeah, I mean, like the amount of dialogue that basically creates this very alive socioeconomic status quo that can be analyzed through all these different lenses is amazing.
Yeah.
My preferred analytic reading of the film is the analytic idea of how do I make the coolest car crash and what can I do to just make people talk about it more.
I'll be honest, dude. Like, so we were talking earlier, like how much did George Miller sit down and say the designing principle of this film is going to be this like cultural analysis and critique?
Yeah, right.
I think you're right, dude. I think, like you said, he set up a world and he's got his finger on the cultural pulse, obviously. But at the same time, he's like, I'm going to make the most badass action fucking movie that I can.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it happened because of the cultural moment and because of his 70 years of life, maybe, and because of the influences. It just kind of came out this way. I think,
so
and I don't want to
interesting
discredit him, but I feel like
I think it's interesting that you can have a movie, right? Because I think a lot of people think that you can have an action movie or you can have a thoughtful movie, but you've got to pick, right? You can't have an action movie that's also going to be really thoughtful and be able to make political or social statements. But this movie is just like unequivocally doing both, and it's so good at both.
And
so
there's not a second of dull exposition.
No, and
Nothing.
nothing is wasted.
Exactly.
Like not a single shot, not a single look, not a single word is wasted throughout the entire thing.
yeah, it's like Christopher Nolan is probably the guy that we maybe think
Yeah.
about most that did this with the Dark Knight
Yeah.
trilogy, right? But I almost
Successfully.
Yeah, successfully, right? I mean, I guess maybe the Wachowskis with the first Matrix, but that is just so exposition heavy. It just kind
Well,
of
the
works.
second two are just
and they kind of retroactively almost discount the
Yeah.
first one in some ways. Sorry, Rebecca.
But even then with the
Tired of
Nolan
fighting
movies,
about the Matrix, guys.
even then with the Nolan movies, still nowhere near as efficient as this.
Yeah, I think
they're not efficient. Exactly.
This has to be the most crazy when you kind of like the ratio of like intelligent conversations that can be had about it to amount of exposition that generate those thoughts. It's amazing.
I would
It's
love
the
to know
best.
how much footage was cut from this, right? Like
a ton.
Yeah, so
Didn't it take a bunch of years to make?
Yeah.
And that's why when we're talking about like the feminist part of the movie, it's like, and how it was kind of felt very timely. Like this movie could have come out literally anytime in the last 15 years. They've been trying to make it for that long.
Really.
So it's kind of like, imagine this movie coming out in 2005. It's like it would have been. I feel like received differently in a weird way. But I'm glad it took so long.
Yeah, me
too.
In
So
hindsight.
like Walt Whitman, I think Walt Whitman's the one that said, "I'm sorry, this is so long. I didn't have time to edit it shorter." Right?
I love that.
And that's like, because when you write a paper, when I write something for publication, it starts off at like 55 pages, and then I cut it down to 12, and that 12 is just like the fucking best stuff in the whole thing, right? And it's like, so of course, he must have shot like 50 times that much footage, and he was just like, we are going to cut for 10 years or something.
Well, no, it was
And then
like
it gets-
sandstorms fucked it up, and all sorts of other shit.
And they filmed it all in Australia? Or?
Yeah, oh yeah.
They were.
Oh, it's so great.
And like Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy hate each other apparently.
Did they?
Yeah,
There's all these like drama.
I didn't.
Yeah, go read about it online.
Why?
The
Okay.
clash of titans.
Egos? I don't know.
Yeah.
Something
Yeah,
maybe.
it's
Egos.
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Whose film
probably
is this?
something like that.
Yeah,
Maybe?
yeah.
Maybe? I don't know.
I mean, because that's also. So I think the old Mad Maxes, right? They don't really make sense why you follow this one hero. I mean, you don't really pay much attention to the shit he gets into, right? He just wanders in and out of people's lives, and you're like, yeah, right. On to the next one, following this, guy through the desert. But this one really made it seem like, I mean, for me, it seemed like Theron and her mission were like they were the real story, and he was just kind of like a really popular, handsome extra who was in it for a lot of, had really great grunts and could really like communicate with it. But it seemed like it was their story. And
have you seen Road Warrior?
Yeah.
Well, because it is kind of similar.
Okay.
Like it's like a whole town has their own story.
Yes,
It's
yeah.
almost like the Man with No Name series, where it's like there's this
Yeah.
whole conflict going on, and then this rogue guy who's on his own, doesn't really want to
Yeah.
be a part of it, but then reluctantly gets
Yeah.
into the whole thing. So, yeah, I think that you're right about like it's definitely more prevalent in this one because
Yeah.
he's definitely more of like almost a supporting character. In
Yeah,
this movie.
yeah, and I think they do a really good job of highlighting. So the last ones, you're like, well, then why are we even following this guy? Like, right? If I mean,
Yeah.
is he that interesting that we're not paying as much attention to like what's actually happening in the cities? We're just following this crazy guy. This one, they're like, okay, first of all, he's definitely for sure crazy, and also we're going to focus on the sort of story that he comes into, and we're going to really make it seem like when he comes in, he's accidental, and when he leaves, he's accidental. And so in that, I thought it was really interesting to have a Mad Max movie where Max genuinely is sort of a secondary, important, crucial to the story unfolding, but it's not about him.
And
right?
it works.
And it
Yeah.
works, yeah.
I also think it works best to have the Max character just be kind of a faceless badass. Like, I don't think we need anything more there.
Yeah.
Like, that's
But
not the
yeah.
identity of the Mad Max franchise.
But I think this film did that better.
Right.
Like they explained or they were able to kind of demonstrate why that works better than the other ones. Because in the other ones you're like, okay, yeah, but just because he's Mel Gibson, just because he got like a pretty face, it doesn't really make much sense. But this one felt like it was like really leaning into that fact,
Yeah.
right, about the arbitrariness of this person, and like they don't care what his story is, or like, yeah, he's got some shit in that past, he's pretty crazy, and then he's going to help and leave, right? And I thought they really did that well in a way that didn't still follow the main character like you follow Mel Gibson, right? Because
Right.
now he really is the nameless, faceless, right? She says, "What's your name?" and he's like, "I'm not giving you one," right?
Yeah.
And so
Right.
we know he's Max, but nobody else even knows that,
That's a good
right?
point.
And so I really liked that they were it seemed that they were super intentional about being like, yeah, let's really make him kind of faceless and nameless, and yeah.
I mean, I had seen Road Warrior once a couple years ago, but I kind of came in here seeing this as almost like a reimagining. Like,
Yeah.
oh, this is a different Max. Max, the
Yeah.
Mad Max, is just like some kind
Yeah.
of archetype that he is now
It's like Batman
being. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess that makes
or
sense.
Spawn.
There's something that goes on in this movie where, so, Furiosa's missing a hand, but then there's twice in the movie where Max's hand gets hurt.
Yeah.
So Max's hand gets caught during an attack, and then he has to
Yeah.
bandage it. And then there's one where Max actually stops an arrow from going into his head.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything there? Do you think that there's any kind of more of like an egalitarian message in trying to like he recognizes her pain or something like that? Because they're both seeking redemption. Furiosa, for unspecified reasons, says that she needs to save the wives to make up for something, and then we've been talking about Max's flashbacks. So is there like kind of this more, whether it's male, female, or just greater camaraderie between the two of them, and that they kind of are experiencing each other's pain or something like that?
Jesus. I didn't even think about
I thought that it was
Me
just
neither.
for his hand to have been hurt twice.
Yeah.
I felt like there was something had to be
Yeah,
sort of
maybe.
deliberate
Yeah.
there.
Maybe because maybe he's kind of the obverse of her character, right?
Right.
Like maybe he's
Yeah.
somehow, if he's that purgatorial figure, and maybe he's like a guardian angel, and he has to sort of, he has to suffer with her in a sort of Christian sense, right? There has
Interesting.
to be some sort of a lining of suffering in order for them to be able to both get the redemption that they need. And that's how he gets his redemption, is he learns to not be seeking after himself, but he actually helps them.
Yeah.
And that's his transformation. Is his redemption at first is, I'm on my own, I'm the lone road
Yeah.
warrior. But then he, because he kind of is forced into it, and then he kind of embraces it, but he then starts to become someone who helps others. And so I was actually thinking, so like Haraway, she talks about the idea of affinity as being something that's more powerful than like identity. And so you connect, and it's this idea of like, she talks about this in the Cyborg Manifesto, and I can't remember, it was so long ago that I read it. But it's this idea, because I was thinking about technology and nature, and Mad Max doesn't have any of the limits in nature. He's like, for all intents and purposes, he's built, he's fit, I mean, he's strong as fuck, he's capable, he doesn't have any ailments physically wrong with him. So he's kind of like a complete human, and he exists in that in-between purgatorial state. But maybe he has to somehow have an affinity with this other person in order to be redeemed. I'm just bullshitting right now because of what you said, but there's something interesting in that, maybe.
Well, I feel like what they really do a good job of highlighting is the sort of thin line between being so great and then being super precarious, right? And she's this really precarious character who's super strong and capable and has like some great fight sequences, and but she's also like missing a hand, and you don't really see that stop her in any way, even though she's somewhat precarious because of it. And then I think you see the same thing with Max. Right? He goes back and forth between being super strong and super precarious, and then super strong and then super precarious.
Because he's got like the thing attached to his face, and he's like a chain attached to his head,
and a chain attached to his head, and he's being bled. So we first see him and he's strong, and then he's being bled, and then we see him and he's kind of strong again, and then he gets hurt, and then he's strong, and then he gets hurt.
There's that cool scene when he's trying to shoot with the sniper gun,
yeah,
and he misses the first two,
and then
he gives it up reluctantly, and then she nails it.
So I didn't even think he shot. I think he was just like, you know what? No, she's going to be better at it.
He shot twice.
Because there's 3 bullets.
And then she said, one of the wives says, another instance, right? She's counting the bullets that are in the gun, and she's like, "You only have one more." This like, random wife. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Cool. How are we doing on time, guys? Okay, cool.
We were talking about other super smart action movies. I feel like James Cameron is probably our most intelligent and cinematic
You think,
director.
man? God.
You don't think Terminator 2 is an intelligent action movie?
Yeah,
well-made action
that's
movie?
1 out of 7.
Yeah.
You don't
Because then
think
Avatar is just
that's the only one you can
cliche.
give that's not good?
Titanic.
He doesn't make very many movies.
True Lies is a action-packed,
Is it
intelligent
smart?
action. Yeah, it's smart.
How is it
I
smart?
think
I don't know.
Christopher Nolan is a much better choice.
Well, he gets into more philosophical stuff, I guess. I guess I'm.
Fuck it. Have you seen Pain and Gain? Michael Bay, man. That is his
No,
stalker.
James Cameron, dude.
Come
Smart,
on.
intelligent action. But I want to know what is the. Let's talk about the flamethrower guitar man. Who?
Yeah,
What?
dude.
Why? Who? Who is he?
Yeah, who
Well,
who
that's
comes
like
up with
that's
this?
like the epic. Everything is just about like jazzing up the war boys, and this is basically just like the war drum line.
Exactly,
or,
or
something
like the bagpipes
that,
that
I want to
Scots
see
used
his
to walk
movie.
with.
Dude,
would love to see
I think
his-
that guy should, like sign up for the U.S. Army,
Yeah,
because
who
I'm pretty
was
sure that
it?
every army would be more jazzed if they had that guy.
I feel like who played that guy? Wasn't it some famous musician?
Oh, really?
I don't know.
Was it Dave Grohl?
I don't
way.
recall, but
Should've been.
but I remember hearing like that it wasn't just like some dude who could play the electric guitar. I think they picked.
Was it
someone.
Buckethead?
That'd be fucking awesome. For it.
Yeah, that was yeah.
No, I love that character, man. I mean, I just wonder.
What
you
an
know,
awesome
we,
just little.
yeah, we've all either watched a shitload of movies, we've made stuff, we create content. Like, what the fuck? I want to know what is in your mind. It's like, bro, there's gonna be this massive monster truck, and there's a dude that's on like these rubber bands that's rocking out with the guitar. Flames are gonna come out of it, and he's got like fucking vampire teeth or some shit too. He's gonna be like a weird demon-y looking thing.
Yeah, he's got something going on like that. Yeah, I agree. That
Hey.
I don't know if that comes out of George Miller's mind or if
It
he has
does.
a production
Like the
designer.
production designer.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so great.
No, he's 70.
Yeah.
He thought of all this.
Yeah.
He thought of the blood bag shit. Like, who thought of
Yeah.
that? He
I know.
did. And he's
I want to
70.
know. I want to know what the guitar guy does, like after he climbs down off the rig, right? Like he just calmly climbs down, like wipes off the face paint, gets out of his spandex suit.
Well, no,
It's
you know
like,
he has no
he's just like
eyes.
he's like super
You
chill.
can't see, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they just plug him in, and he's just the entertainment for
Like,
the city, no matter
like what kind of
I'll be
life
here
does
all
this
week.
guy lead when he's not rocking out and leading the war boys into war?
There are a subgenre of like the really old directors that make these really hardcore movies, and I feel like this is up at the top of the list of the fuck you, I can still make awesome
Yeah,
movies
yeah.
list.
Right.
And then there's Scorsese's Wolf of Wall Street,
Yes.
made by 71-year-old Scorsese. Then there's William Friedkin, who made Killer
Killer
Joe
Joe.
at
Yeah.
76.
That movie's awesome.
And Bug,
Bug. I never
like
saw
5
Bug.
years earlier or whatever.
Yeah.
Bug's awesome.
Is it?
I mean,
Killer
but
Joe's
he's made,
legit.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, think about that. Those guys are like fucking holding on to it,
Yeah.
in their
Oh,
old age.
yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's so funny because there are a lot of people that say, that there's like a there's a half-life for directors,
Well,
right?
I never
Or a shelf
understand that.
life.
Like Quentin Tarantino's always like, "Oh, old directors should just
Right.
get out of the way," and it's just like, but you got all these people totally, showing them up. I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, look, it happens to some people. Look at Tim Burton. People just like, you know what? I got.
Look at Francis Ford Coppola. Like.
Well, Francis Ford Coppola, like, I mean, he's not like a sellout. He makes movies that nobody watches now.
Yeah, but they suck. He made everyone's favorite top 5 favorite movies or whatever, and then he makes movies that like suck and
I
no
would
one wants to
rather
see.
him make small shitty movies than big shitty movies.
I don't know about that. I don't know.
I haven't seen it. Are they like art housey?
They're
indie?
just
Yeah, Tetro.
Some of them are okay.
Tetro's
Tetro's all
Youth,
right.
Youth Without Youth.
Youth
is
Without Youth sucks.
pretty hard to
Tetro's
watch.
all right.
Yeah, didn't he make another one that
He
was
made
like
one with Val Kilmer and Dan Deacon that is not really watchable.
Fuck, man, I haven't paid attention to a film of his since.
Hey man, if I mean,
80s,
you make
70s,
money
80s.
selling wine and then make whatever
yes.
art projects you want on the side, that's the life.
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, you've already made Apocalypse Now, The Godfather. What else do you need?
William Friedkin's already made The Exorcist. Why does he need to make Killer Joe? Well, Scorsese's already made fucking every other movie he's ever
No,
made.
it's true. You're right.
Why does he need to make anything ever?
It's so funny because this is the thing that like every producer and every director and every agent tells you when you first move to LA. They're like, you just got to play the game, and then when you're successful enough, then you can make your own shit, right? And I feel like, well, maybe that's what Coppola's doing. He's like, bro, I kind of played the game, I did the blockbuster shit, and now I'm just doing whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
I
That is
wanna
what
do
he's
now 'cause
doing.
I've got
It's
license.
just, I
They say the
disagree
same thing
with
in
his
academia.
choices.
Yeah, you're right. Once you get tenure,
Once you get tenure, you can write whatever the fuck you want. But for now,
Play the game.
Yeah, play the game.
I mean, even Scorsese had to get shady money from Malaysia to get The Wolf of Wall Street made. It's not easy to get these movies made, and that's like a whole fucking
Well, yeah.
grind in itself of just maintaining the optimism of like, all right, I'm going to spend 10 years trying to schmooze rich people to make this movie.
Yeah.
That's
And
that's
hats
rough.
off to
Yeah.
George Miller.
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
I mean, this movie made a shitload of money.
Oh
right?
yeah, it was
Yeah.
pretty much a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
for what it
Worldwide.
was, I mean, it didn't make Infinity War money, but nothing does.
yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because then you think, is it a successful film? It's so shitty that the movie business now makes you think, unless you make $1 billion, it's like,
Yeah.
no. Because remember when
This movie
$100
made
million?
$1 billion.
Did it make $1 billion?
I mean,
Not a billion.
No, but relative to its size,
It did
you
well,
know.
very
Yeah.
well.
I just remember back in the day, I remember it was like $100 million was the
yeah.
benchmark. That was a blockbuster movie. And now
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
$100 million. That's a flop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Solo makes 100 million in like a week, and it's like pff,
Right.
losers.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I know. It's fucking
That's
gnarly, man.
crazy.
All right, guys, we're gonna move into the mailbag. We got one question this week from Jacob. Since we have the whole Matrix crew here, it's gonna be about the Matrix. So it's actually not specific to the Matrix, but he said, what disappointed me about your conversation was that y'all never asked the question, what are some other sci-fi films that tackle huge philosophical questions, but do so in a way that works filmically? What do you guys think? I think like Blade
Jeez.
Runner
Yeah, for
is
sure.
is a key one of those. I haven't rewatched Blade Runner 2049, so I don't really know. I mean, 2001 works in its own way,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't say that it's as watchable as something like Blade Runner. I mean, the
Yeah.
original Matrix is a perfect example of this.
Snowpiercer.
Snowpiercer
Oh, yeah.
is
Yeah.
Snowpiercer.
super watchable.
What's that new one that he did about the like hippo-looking thing?
Oh, Okja.
Oh,
I refuse to
yeah,
watch
Okja.
that.
Dude, Okja rules.
Yeah,
Did
Okja's yeah, that's
Bong
that's
Joon-ho's
pretty
one of my
great.
favorite filmmakers, but someone told me that this movie turns you vegan, and I'm like, well, not seeing it.
Most watchable what? Oh
He said, what are other sci-fi films that tackle huge philosophical questions but do so in a way that works filmically?
Akira.
So, Akira is a good
Yeah.
one.
You know, a movie that's about to come out, James Cameron's Alita Battle Angel.
Yeah.
That
Are you
look-
looking forward to that?
Hell yeah.
Dude,
Cannot
I
wait.
can't look at that movie without Uncanny Valley like creeping me out, and I don't want to see it.
But I think that's part of the movie, is the Uncanny Valley stuff.
Well, it's not being marketed effectively then, because I'm just looking at this. I'm saying action movie. I can't really look at this thing, girl, robot thing, without feeling uncomfortable. I'm not going to see this movie.
Oh,
Yeah.
dude.
I
Bad
think
decision.
also it's more like Ex Machina would be a good
Oh,
one.
fuck yeah.
That's a good one.
And Blomkamp's canon.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
District
his first
9.
one,
You mean
District
District
9 is
9?
like the best
District 9's amazing.
movie. I love it so much. I've actually published a paper on this, little promo.
But not Chappie.
No, but Chappie and whatever that one was with
Elysium?
Matt. Yeah, Matt
That one
Damon.
sucked.
So I thought those were both movies that like could have been so great, and they just weren't. And it was crushing. I did cry a lot at Chappie, at both of them, but that doesn't make them brilliant movies.
I mean, are you guys Star Trek
Just me.
fans? Would that shit fit? I'm not a Star
Oh
Trek
man, if
fan.
Alec was here. Oh, you are.
Am
Yeah.
I a Star Trek fan? Yes,
yeah?
I am.
So
Yes.
isn't that like what people hold up? Like academics love to talk about Star
But
Trek.
I don't know if the movies do it. I think the series for sure. Same thing with Battlestar Galactica. I mean, God, if you want to get into television, well, don't even get me started. But yeah, there's a lot of science fiction television that is really, really, really focused on philosophical.
Well, in a way,
Or Fight
science.
Club. Fight Club's another great one.
Well, yeah, I mean,
That's
'cause,
sci-fi?
well, what are we thinking? Yeah, like,
Oh,
well,
sci-fi. Sorry.
Well, but it kind of. Well, yeah, it's not. But like,
kinda
what's
surrealist or
12
something.
Monkeys?
12 Monkeys is
yeah,
a good
that's
sci-fi.
a good one. What is that? Is that Terry Gilliam?
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, Terry
but, like,
Gilliam,
I
yeah.
feel like sci-fi in general, as a genre, is
Yeah.
inherently about speculating on the future. It's
Mm-hmm.
about escaping this world and creating the new, or transforming the world, or pressing the scope of the imagination, or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's kind of all inherently, at least at a latent level, political. Or philosophical, or
Yeah.
cultural, or something.
And we've just named a bunch of films that do that well, because there are some that do it and they don't do it very well. Like
Starship
Matrix
Troopers?
1 and 2. Yeah, Starship
Fuck
Troopers.
no, it's
yeah.
awesome. I love it.
Jupiter
Now-
Ascending, which I
Jupiter
really
Ascending's not
enjoyed as a
good.
movie, and
Oh,
I just
man.
loved.
Valerian?
I loved the Terry Gilliam cameo, but
Galaxy
not great.
Quest is a good one.
Did Jupiter
Galaxy
Ascending
Quest.
have like a philosophical backbone to it?
Yeah.
It did. Okay.
Well,
are
I
you sure
mean-
you're not thinking of Cloud Atlas?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, Cloud Atlas.
I am not
No.
a fan
Yeah,
of Cloud
not me
Atlas.
neither.
It's
me
like
neither.
12 hours
Don't even-
long, and it's
yeah,
scattered as
terrible.
fuck. and-
But so in
I
Jupiter
liked it.
Ascending, right, people are being mined for their whole planets are being mined for
Okay.
their bodies, right? So they can keep everybody else young. I mean, I think that's another movie that deals a lot with, frankly, with animal issues, with like whether it's okay to harvest other creatures for your desires or your benefits and that sort of thing. So yeah. It's not mostly it's just cool gadgets in them, but
Okay. All I remember is Channing Tatum lion or whatever.
I just remember Eddie Redmayne's weird voice accent.
Oh, yeah, he was like
right?
so bad, right?
Yeah.
Like just cringy performance. But like not his problem. I
No,
always
not his
feel
problem.
I always
Yeah.
feel bad for actors who would just like show up work at a green screen
Yeah.
in Burbank, and they're like, and just like two directors come up to you and say like, all right, so there's gonna be like a starship going on. You're on a starship.
This
and
tennis
your
ball is a
underling,
starship.
This
Yeah.
tennis ball is a starship. You know,
Yeah.
you're the Lord.
Yeah.
You know, like you have no idea if it's working. You know, you
Yes.
just have to trust the
Yes.
CGI team to create around you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Another sci-fi movie with philosophical ideas I recommend is called Spaced Invaders. Movie from the 80s about a gang of goofy aliens that come around and
Oh.
just wander around the Earth. Highly recommend it.
Attack the Block.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
great
Yes,
movie.
Such a
Yes,
good movie, and I
good
don't think
movie.
it gets like any attention or press. No one ever mentions it anywhere. But
should.
it's fucking brilliant. Yeah.
I think did we see that together?
Yeah, I
Oh,
love that
yeah,
fucking
yeah.
good
That's
joke.
awesome.
We should do
movie.
a-
That,
we should
that
do
was
a,
the origin of John Boyega.
That's what
Yeah,
made him- that's
right.
what
We
made
should
him
do a
who he
show me the
was.
meaning
Yeah.
about that movie.
Okay.
That's a
That-
good movie.
Yeah, it's a great.
There was another
movie.
one that just came to mind. I might have lost it.
I mean, there's got to be a shitload of old ones,
Watership
yeah,
Down.
for sure.
right?
Yeah.
Watership Down? Isn't that a Vonnegut novel?
Oh, it's an animated movie about rabbits.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a Vonnegut.
well, that's a
story,
book
isn't
too
it?
that kids
Yeah.
have to read in middle school. I think.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not.
It's a good
Vonnegut.
movie, though.
No, I don't think it's. Yeah, I don't think it is.
Oh, okay.
I
I
don't
just remember
remember who
seeing
it
the
is,
cover,
but-
and there's a fucking rabbit on the cover.
Yeah, I want to.
I never read it.
It's a good movie.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. So thanks everyone for listening. It's been great having Austin and Rebekah here in person. Thanks guys for stopping by. It's great having you.
Yeah.
Dude, this
Now
is
you
great.
know what the space is like in real life.
Yeah, this is great, man. And apparently the fridge is stocked with LaCroix, and I've never had LaCroix.
Oh, you've never had a LaCroix?
I've never had a LaCroix, so I'm going to go try my first one right now.
All right.
Be
Welcome
prepared.
Get
to
ready.
Wisecrack.
Because this is like everyone in LA is obsessed with it.
Everybody
so.
in America is obsessed with
It's,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
I can't fucking
water.
stomach it, man. I hate it.
Oh
Really?
my gosh,
Yeah.
I love LaCroix.
Give me a damn Coke.
All right, guys. Where can we find you on the internet, Ryan?
You can find me on YouTube and what's that other? Oh,
Twitter?
Facebook.
Facebook.
Oh, and Patreon.
And Twitter.
Oh, all those things. Yeah, Ryan Shorts. I make weekly comedy videos, and I make a game show in my garage called Ryan's Game Show.
And they're awesome.
Thank you.
And Austin.
You can hit me up on Twitter, Austin_Hayden. I also do another movie podcast called I Dig This Movie.
And it's
then
awesome.
It's fun. It's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, yeah. And then I do a philosophy podcast called Owls at Dawn that you can check out as well.
And check out all the Uwe Boll movies that you've been doing. Have you seen the whole canon yet?
No. So it was a punishment because I lost we did like a bromance series, and I chose Ryan Reynolds as my bromance, and he chose Kurt Russell as his. And then we watched 3 films, and we did like a thing where we rated the other person's filmography on a film-by-film basis. And I lost, ultimately. So the punishment was that I had to watch 3 Uwe Boll films and then do an analysis or talk about them. And I watched House of the Dead, Blood Rain, and Rampage. And Rampage
I've seen it.
is actually good.
Yeah, I like
It's a good
the scene when he
movie.
walks into the lottery or the bingo.
So
thing.
tense and
Yeah.
interesting, and like I don't know. After he gave up on his German shell company tax scheme thing, he maybe decided to make some interesting films. I don't know.
He
That's
made
the one
about-
with the guy with red hair is the star.
No. This is
It's the town shooter movie.
the Town Shooter. Yeah, and he's done like 3 sequels, and it's the same dude he's worked with, and he's actually a phenomenal actor.
I think
can't
you're
remember his
thinking
name.
of the 9/11 like satire movie.
What
with
was that
those-
called?
What's the one? Yeah, where it's like the window washer that gets
Yes.
hit by 9/11.
Yes, that's what I was
Postal.
Jesus.
Postal.
Oh, that's the first.
Yeah.
That was his first attempt at
No,
being political.
that's not-
Was that it?
Yeah,
No.
I'm almost
Postal. I
positive.
thought Postal was the one of a guy who literally goes postal and like
No,
shoots
that's
up a whole town.
Rampage. And
I mean, in Rampage, the guy goes postal.
yeah,
Quote
and in
unquote.
Postal,
Yeah.
it's Osama bin Laden,
Okay.
like as a comedy.
You're right.
And then there's Blubberella, which is he
Oh,
made Blood Rain 3, and then it's like the shot-for-shot satire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's either
Have
a
you- wait,
genius
did you
or he's
watch
crazy
that?
as fuck. No,
'Cause
but I've seen like analyses of it and like clips and shit like that.
Analyses.
Yeah, well, I mean, as much as he
His
can
movie about
analyze.
German war tunnelers is actually pretty good. I'd recommend that one.
What's that one called?
It's
Rat
like,
rats or something?
Yeah,
Rat
some-
hole or rats
yeah,
or something?
like that. Yeah, it's watchable.
Fucking. Yeah. So,
All right. Well,
And then Rebecca?
does not have Twitter.
I don't. What's Twitter?
We can't find you on the internet.
Yeah, but I mean on academia.edu. I'm on Facebook.
And what's your paper? Was it on Elysium? You said?
No, it was on District 9 and Avatar. They were made the same year. One of them got a lot more press than the other one. Avatar and over at District 9, even though
3D.
yeah. But I basically I'm not going to go to the argument. But I argue that that District 9 is like a post-structuralist masterpiece.
I'm gonna read it.
Agree.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, signing off. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Peace.
Goodbye from Hollywood, California.
Witness
me.
me.
Later.